I left before dawn. Didn't slam the door. Didn't leave a note. Just a perfectly brewed pot of coffee and an empty driveway. That's how I wanted it. Quiet. Clean. No big scene. No last words. Just absence, cold and complete. The house still smelled like the wood polish I'd used on the floors the night before. Funny, the things you do out of habit. I'd mopped, wiped down the counters, even refolded the kitchen towels. Everything in its place. I guess I wanted her to come downstairs and think nothing was wrong for about 3 seconds. Then it would hit her. The silence would stretch. My boots wouldn't be by the door. My keys wouldn't be on the hook. The garage would be empty, and so would my side of the closet. Not a single pair of jeans, not a belt, not even the flannel shirt she once called her favorite. I took everything that mattered to me. Left the rest. She'd call my phone. It would go straight to a number that no longer worked. Maybe she'd text, still thinking I was just blowing off steam. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't running. I wasn't afraid. I was finished. The night before, I had sat in the truck for a long time, just staring at the house, thinking about all the years we spent there. The back porch I built with my own 2 hands. The kitchen table we found at that old farmhouse out near Kessler's Creek. The bedroom we painted together one summer afternoon, laughing when we both ended up with streaks of gray in our hair. But those things don't hold people. They just hold memories. And memories aren't enough when the truth finally shows its face. I had noticed things for a while. A new perfume, she said, came from a gift bag. Long showers after late returns. Her phone screen lighting up face down. Always quiet. Small things, but they stack up. It wasn't the first time I'd gotten that feeling. That knowing in your gut that says, something's wrong. But this time, I listened to it. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions I didn't want the answers to. I just watched. Quietly. Carefully. And when I knew, truly knew, I started moving in the background. Like you do when you're about to leave a job you once loved, but now you're just counting the days until the exit. I made copies of documents. Transferred titles. Talked to my lawyer. Switched accounts, locked down assets, moved the important stuff to a storage unit in the next town over. No one knew. Not my brother. Not my best friend. I kept it close. I packed in stages. A few things each day. A tool here, a box of old letters there. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Hard to tell with her lately. Her eyes had changed. Not cold, just distracted. Like I was a radio playing in the background of her life, tolerable, but not worth turning up. By the time I walked out that morning, I had everything ready. My truck was loaded. The cabin in Colorado was already rented. Utilities paid up in cash. A dog-eared paperback sat in the passenger seat, something I picked up at a used bookstore, some war novel I figured I'd never finish. But it felt right to bring something old with me into something new. I stood in the living room for a few minutes before I left. Just stood there. It looked exactly like it always had, clean, ordinary. But it felt hollow. Not because I was leaving. Because I'd already left a long time ago, somewhere in my mind. The first time I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. I poured one last cup of coffee from the pot I'd set to brew the night before. Took a sip. Just how I liked it, black, hot, bitter. Left the rest in the carafe for her. She'd see it and wonder what it meant. Maybe she'd think it was a gesture. Maybe she'd think it was cruel. I didn't care. Let her interpret it however she wanted. Because this wasn't about punishment. This wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. Mine. And no one was going to take that from me again. They weren't hers. I knew it the second I saw them. Silver hoops, maybe 1.5 inches across. Delicate but not cheap. Polished clean. Hardly worn. They caught the light from the bathroom window and just sat there, right next to her curling iron on the counter, like they belonged. But they didn't. Not in our house. Not in that space. Lisa hated silver. She used to joke that silver made her look washed out, said it clashed with her skin tone. Always wore gold. Even her wedding ring was a warm, brushed yellow. I'd offered to buy her a sterling bracelet once, years ago, something with turquoise. She smiled and said, "Gold only, cowboy." So when I saw those earrings sitting there, silver, smooth, almost clinical, I knew. There was a small engraving on the inside of one hoop. I squinted to read it, careful not to smudge anything. J, 2 tiny letters. That was all. But they may as well have been carved in stone. I stood there for a long minute, the bathroom quiet around me. The shower still dripped from her morning routine, steam clinging to the mirror. Her perfume hung in the air, sweet, overdone, not the kind she used to wear. Something had shifted, and now I could feel it in every room of the house. But those earrings, those were the proof. She left them behind like they were hers. Careless. Bold. Maybe she thought I'd never notice. Or maybe she didn't care if I did. That detail cracked everything. It wasn't like catching her in the act. It wasn't dramatic. But it was enough to change the air in the room. Suddenly, I saw things clearer. Like someone had wiped down a dusty window I'd been looking through for months. I didn't yell. Didn't confront her. I just put the earring back, exactly where I found it. What good would an argument do? I'd ask where they came from. She'd say she borrowed them from a friend, or bought them on sale, or found them in her purse from months ago. There'd be a shrug, maybe a small laugh, something to push it all away. She was good at that. Always had been. But I wasn't the man I used to be. When we first met, I believed every word she said without question. She had this way of talking with her hands, eyes wide, full of conviction. You wanted to believe her. And for a long time, I did. But now, I trusted what I saw with my own eyes more than anything that came out of her mouth. Those earrings weren't mine. And they weren't hers. They belonged to somebody else, someone close enough to be in our bathroom, in our house, touching the same spaces I came home to every day. And that was worse than anything I'd imagined. Not the cheating itself, if that's what it was. It was the violation, the familiarity, the arrogance of bringing that into the place we built together. The house was small. One story. Cozy, she called it. We picked it together before the wedding. Fixed it up ourselves, scraped wallpaper, patched drywall, even planted shrubs out front. A little ranch-style thing with faded red shutters and a driveway just wide enough for my truck and her compact car to squeeze side by side. I thought it was enough. I thought we were enough. But now the bathroom felt like someone else had passed through. Someone with polished silver hoops and initials I didn't recognize. And once you see that, you start seeing everything else differently too. I didn't tell her I knew. I went about my day. Ate dinner. Watched the news. Even kissed her goodnight. Her lips were soft, like always. But something in me had already gone cold. And for the first time in a long while, I knew what had to come next. But not tonight. Tonight, I'd leave everything exactly where it was. Tomorrow, I'd begin. It was a Thursday when I followed her. That kind of evening when the air feels heavy, not quite hot, not quite cool, just thick with the kind of stillness that makes you itch under your shirt. She told me she was heading out for dinner with Jen and the girls. The tone she used was light, casual. She grabbed her purse off the hook, gave me a quick peck on the cheek, and said she probably wouldn't be too late. That was the third time in 2 weeks she'd gone out on a weeknight. Lisa wasn't the type for late dinners. Not before. Not when we were still trying. She used to complain that anything past 8 upset her stomach. But lately, she'd been dressing nicer for these girl nights. Curling her hair. Wearing heels. Spritzing perfume just before walking out, not hours earlier like usual. I waited 15 minutes after she pulled out of the driveway. Long enough to let her get comfortable. Then I grabbed my keys, a windbreaker, and the old Nikon I kept in the hall closet. One of those digital models from a few years back, outdated, but it still took a decent photo. I kept it charged for vacations we never took. I didn't tail her hard. I've done enough driving in my life to know how to stay 2 cars back without drawing attention. She headed toward the edge of town, right past the usual restaurant row, and into the older district near the tracks. That's when my stomach sank. She pulled into the lot of the tap room. That place. It was one of the first places I ever took her, years ago. Back when it was still new and a little rough around the edges. She hated it. Too loud, she said. Too many TVs, too many hipsters, not enough wine on the menu. I never dragged her back there after that. But here she was, parking 2 spots from the entrance like she came every week. I stayed across the street in my truck, half shielded by a rusted-out billboard frame. The kind that used to advertise cheap tires and hunting gear, now just peeling paint and shadows. I killed the engine, cracked the window, and waited. It didn't take long. A silver sedan rolled in behind her, newer model, shiny, tinted windows. He got out quick, didn't even look around. Tall guy. Khakis, button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up just so. Confident walk. He headed straight for her, and she didn't hesitate. She met him halfway. He kissed her. Right there in the parking lot. Not a hesitant, awkward peck either. This was familiar. Like they'd done it 100 times before. She smiled up at him. He put his hand on the small of her back, and they went inside together like they belonged to each other. That moment broke something in me. Not loudly. Not like glass shattering. More like a quiet snap. The kind you feel in your chest when you realize you're not shocked. Just confirmed. I grabbed the camera off the passenger seat, took 3 photos through the windshield. Clear enough. I zoomed in on the license plate of his car. Then one more of the building, just for context. I didn't wait to see what they ordered. I didn't want to know if they sat in a booth or at the bar. I didn't care what she laughed at or what excuses she'd cook up later if I ever brought it up. I had everything I needed. I slid the camera back in the case and started the truck. Pulled away slow, turned down the side street, and drove with both windows down, letting the night air hit me. By the time I got back to the house, it was dark. I didn't turn on the porch light. I went inside, set my keys on the counter, and sat down at the kitchen table. She came home a little after 10. Said they had drinks, talked too long. I nodded, smiled, said I was glad she had fun. She didn't notice the camera was gone, didn't notice anything was off. And that told me even more than the photos had. She didn't think I'd ever notice. She thought I'd keep playing my part, husband, handyman, background noise. But I wasn't background. I was watching. And now, I was planning. The next 72 hours were surgical. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just quiet moves made with purpose, like a man tightening bolts before a long haul. Every step I took was measured. Precise. Like a checklist I didn't need to write down because it had already been playing in my head for weeks. First thing I did was separate the bank accounts. We had 2 joint accounts, one for bills, one for groceries and incidentals. I emptied both into an account she didn't know existed, one I'd opened 6 months earlier when she first started acting strange. I left just enough in the joint checking to keep the lights on for another week. Not out of kindness, just strategy. If she saw the account go dry overnight, it might spook her before I was ready. Next was the savings. That one was easy. She rarely checked it. I rerouted the funds into a separate portfolio under a trust one created the year after my dad passed. It was supposed to be for our future, maybe a vacation cabin, maybe early retirement. Funny how fast our future becomes my fallback plan. I called my business partner, Travis, asked to meet after hours at the shop. Didn't tell him much, just enough to explain I was making structural changes. We reworked the LLC paperwork, moved my shares into a holding company with my name on it only. The guy didn't ask many questions, bless him. Just nodded, printed what needed printing, and poured me a cold one when it was done. Then I hit the house. I packed what mattered. Not all at once, would have been too obvious. Just a box here, a duffel bag there. It felt strange packing up pieces of my own life like I was stealing from myself. Tools first, the ones passed down from my father, not the store-bought junk we picked up on sale. I knew which ones were mine by weight and rust and feel. Then the important documents. Birth certificate, passport, business papers, insurance, a copy of our marriage certificate. I kept it not for sentiment, but for what was coming. I went through the photo albums next. Took the ones from before her childhood, fishing trips, my army days. I left the wedding album. Left the pictures of us in New Orleans, Nashville, the one from that summer picnic where we spilled wine on the blanket and laughed like we were drunk on more than just wine. Those weren't mine anymore. Not really. I packed my dad's rifle last, wrapped it in an old quilt, and carried it out like it was glass. I didn't plan to use it for anything. It just didn't belong under the same roof anymore. I rented a storage unit one town over, no paper trail, month-to-month lease. Paid in cash. The guy behind the desk didn't ask a thing, just slid me the lock and handed me the receipt. I loaded it with everything I'd gathered, double-checked the latch twice, and drove off without looking back. The house was starting to feel empty by then, even if you couldn't tell at first glance. That's how I wanted it. Like a stage being cleared for the final scene, one quiet prop at a time. Next, I rerouted the mail. Forwarded to a P.O. box I'd opened under an old fishing license alias. Lisa wouldn't think to check it. Probably never even remembered I had one. Most of the junk mail would still land at the house for a while. But nothing that mattered would. I logged into all our shared accounts, streaming, utilities, email, and changed every password. Started shutting down what didn't need to stay open. Cleaned out old files, logged out of everything on the home computer. The one thing I didn't touch was her stuff. I didn't go near her drawers, her closet, or her personal laptop. I didn't need to. This wasn't about her. Not anymore. This was about reclaiming what was mine, my time, my work, my name, my pride. And I wasn't about to let her burn it all down on her way out without a fight. On the third night, I stood in the middle of our living room. The same one we decorated with mismatched throw pillows and that stupid driftwood lamp she just had to have. It looked the same, but it felt like a hotel room. Neutral. Lifeless. I turned off the light and let the dark settle around me. By the time she noticed something was wrong, I'd already be gone. and she wouldn't find anything left but a cold bed and silence. By Friday, I was in Colorado. I crossed the state line just after dawn, a thin ribbon of orange cracking across the eastern horizon. The road was quiet, just long stretches of asphalt, a few trucks passing in the other direction, and the occasional gas station sign flickering like it didn't quite believe it was morning yet. The cabin sat about an hour outside of Durango, tucked behind a line of pine trees that hadn't been trimmed in years. I found it through a guy I met at a gun show 2 summers back. He had mentioned it over a couple of beers, said it was his grandfather's place, hadn't been used in ages. Off-grid, 1 bar of cell signal on a good day, wood stove for heat, and a porch that looked out onto a ridge with nothing but air and wind between you and the sky. Back then, I didn't think much of it. But 4 months ago, I called that guy. Told him I might be interested if the offer still stood. He gave me the name of the property manager, and I wired the first 6 months' rent under a pseudonym. The key came in a plain envelope, taped to a postcard of a bear standing in a river. That morning, I parked my truck in the gravel drive and sat there for a moment with the engine running. The windows were still fogged from the cold air. There were tiny scratches across the windshield I hadn't noticed before. It was quiet, too quiet, almost, but not the kind that makes you nervous. The kind that makes your shoulders drop and your jaw unclench. I stepped out and stood in front of the place. It was smaller than I remembered from the pictures, just a squat A-frame with dark wood and a green metal roof, dusted with early snow. The door stuck a little, but the inside was clean. Sparse, but solid. 1 big room, wood stove, small kitchenette, a table and 2 chairs, and a twin bed pushed up against the back wall. No TV, no clocks, no sound except the wind tapping against the window like it had a story to tell. I unpacked slowly, set my duffel down, put the box with my tools and the rifle in the corner, hung my jacket on a nail by the door. That was it. That night, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket I'd brought from the house. Same one we used to toss over our legs during movie nights on the couch. Funny what ends up meaning something in the end. I drank a lukewarm beer and watched the stars come out, one by one, like old friends showing up late to a party. It was the first time in a long while I felt still. My phone buzzed for the first time just after dusk. I didn't look, just turned the ringer off. It kept buzzing throughout the night, her name lighting up the screen again and again. Where are you? Are you okay? Please call me. Then, probably. What the hell is this? You're being ridiculous. This is low even for you. And finally, when the panic started to settle into her chest. I miss you. Can we talk? I'll do anything. I didn't reply. Not once. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Not because I needed the upper hand. Because I was done. Done talking. Done explaining. Done hoping she'd see what she broke and come crawling back with truth in her hands. I wasn't trying to win. There was no scoreboard. This wasn't a stunt. It wasn't about making her feel the hole she left in me. It was about stepping out of that hole entirely. Building a new foundation on soil that wasn't poisoned. On the second night, I chopped firewood until my palms blistered and my shirt stuck to my back. I lit the stove, watched the flames lick the logs, listened to the creak of the old chimney as it came to life. I lay on the bed, eyes open, staring at the wooden ceiling. And I didn't feel lost. I felt found. Let her call. Let her wonder. Let the silence answer. It took me 5 days to get everything together. Not because it was hard, just because I wanted it done right. Clean. No mess, no question marks, no loose ends. When I did this, I wasn't going to half-step it. I wasn't going to give her the chance to twist things, rewrite history, or spin her story like she always did when backed into a corner. I made a manila envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, signed, notarized, dated. Alongside them, a short note in my handwriting. No discussion necessary. Everything's been filed. But that wasn't the only thing inside. I slipped in a flash drive. One of those small plastic ones with a keyring hole. It held 6 folders, all labeled neatly by date. Inside, photos, receipts, and one little bonus I'd come across by accident while I was gathering the rest. Turns out Jeremy wasn't the loyal type either. I found out about it through her coworker, Danielle. Not directly. She didn't even know she was giving me anything. But 2 months earlier, she'd posted a picture on social media of a fun weekend away with her mystery man. She never tagged him. Just a wine glass in focus and a hand reaching across the table with a distinct watch and that same tin sport coat I'd seen on Jeremy the night I followed Lisa to the taproom. I reverse searched the photo's location, then found another one of Danielle wearing his coat outside a cabin rental in Asheville. Same weekend, Lisa had told me she was at a team-building retreat for her office. The overlap was clear. What sealed it was a series of screenshots I managed to get, texts between Jeremy and Danielle. I'd gotten a hold of them through a friend of mine who worked IT for a local phone repair shop. Said a customer had come in weeks ago with a phone crash, and he backed everything up. Nothing illegal, just old data left unsecured in a cloud sync. The texts were undeniable. Dates, compliments, late-night plans, pictures he'd sent her, and things he promised her that mirrored what Lisa used to tell me after her so-called work events. Same language, even. Like he didn't bother changing the script. I compiled it all, put the worst of it in the final folder on the flash drive. Called it FYI. The courier delivered the envelope on a Monday afternoon. I made sure it arrived after she would have gotten home from work. I didn't want it sitting on the porch. I wanted her to see it, pick it up with her own hands, feel its weight. She opened it around 6:30, according to the motion alert I had left tied to the front door camera before I disconnected the system. I watched it one last time before shutting down the feed. She stared at the envelope like it might bite her. That night, the calls came fast. First, 2 back-to-back. Then 4 texts in a row. Then silence. The next morning, I got one last message. "You vindictive bastard." I didn't reply. By Wednesday, she'd moved out. Packed her stuff in black trash bags and plastic totes. Left the framed pictures and all the home goods she'd picked out over the years. Took the jewelry. Took the shoes. Left the wedding band on the kitchen counter. Her sister called once. Left a voicemail asking if I was okay, and that Lisa was going through a hard time. I deleted it before she finished the sentence. Word was, she left Jeremy the same night she got the package. Didn't even confront him. Just packed a bag, left his place, and drove straight to her sister's house. No tears, no explanation, just hollow eyes and silence. That wasn't my goal. I didn't set out to break her down. I wasn't hunting vengeance. I wasn't trying to destroy what little pride she had left. I just wanted her to see the truth, both sides of it. Mine and his. We didn't speak once during the entire process. Not a call, not a text, not even a look across the courtroom. Just paperwork, protocol, and the quiet crumbling of what used to be a marriage. My lawyer, Denton, same guy who handled my dad's estate, handled everything with that old-school, slow-burn confidence that makes judges nod before you even say your piece. He'd seen it all. When I dropped the file on his desk, photos, receipts, timelines, the prenup, he just whistled low and said, "You ready to be done with this?" I told him I was more than ready. I was built for it. Lisa, on the other hand, came in with some flashy young attorney in shiny loafers and a jaw that looked like it had never clenched in real work. He talked fast, wore a pocket square, and acted like he was trying out for a role in a courtroom drama. Denton didn't say much to him, just waited his turn and dismantled everything they brought forward, piece by piece. The prenup was airtight. We'd signed it 5 years ago at her insistence, believe it or not. Back when I had just started the shop and we didn't know if it would sink or swim. She said it was just smart, just business. It covered standard stuff. What was mine stayed mine. What was hers stayed hers. And if either party committed adultery, the other was entitled to keep everything they brought into the marriage. No division. No compensation. I never imagined I'd be the one holding that clause up in court. But there it was, in black and white. And with the flash drive submitted into evidence, there wasn't much room left for arguments. Her attorney tried to push back, of course. Said the terms were disproportionate, now that we had built a life together. Tried to argue that Lisa had contributed emotionally to the business, that she deserved a share of the equity, even hinted that I'd manipulated her into signing under pressure. Denton raised one eyebrow and pointed out that she'd had her own attorney review the contract before signing. That she'd insisted on it. That her own signature was dated 2 full weeks after mine. When the judge finally spoke, it was with a tone that made it clear this wasn't going to be a drawn-out affair. "Agreement stands," he said. And just like that, it was done. I kept the house. The one I'd paid for, maintained, fixed with my own hands. The one she walked through every day, not realizing how much of it bore the weight of my labor. I kept the truck. Not the fancy SUV she drove, just the old Silverado with the dented bumper and the toolbox in the bed. The one that still smelled like grease and dog hair and long road trips. I kept the business. All of it. The clients, the inventory, the name. She walked out of that courtroom with a purse and a folder full of signed copies. No alimony. No property. No stake in anything I built. I don't know if she expected to cry, but she did. Not loud, not theatrical, just quiet tears, the kind that hang on your jaw before you even realize they're there. She wiped them away with the back of her hand and didn't look at me once. That part surprised me, not the crying, but the silence. She didn't plead, didn't whisper anything, just turned and followed her lawyer out like she was walking into weather she couldn't stop. I stayed behind, shook Denton's hand, thanked the judge, then walked out into the parking lot like a man stepping into a new season. I heard later that she moved in with her sister, took up a part-time job at one of those boutiques downtown that sells candles and bath salts with French names. I'm sure she tells a different version of the story. Maybe one where I abandoned her. Maybe one where she made mistakes. Doesn't matter now. I didn't celebrate that night. No whiskey. No music. I just went back to the cabin, took off my boots, and stood on the porch while the wind rolled down the ridge like a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. She was gone. Cabin life suited me more than I expected. There was a rhythm to the days. No alarms, no deadlines. Just the sun coming up, the dog stretching on the rug by the stove, and the quiet weight of solitude wrapping around me like an old flannel. I started building furniture with scrapwood, rough benches, boxy shelves, even a small rocking chair that wobbled a little but held just fine. It felt good to make things again. Simple things. I found Red in the back of a gas station lot on my way back from a feed store. Mangy little mutt with a crooked tail and eyes too serious for his size. He trotted over while I was filling up the truck, sniffed my boots, then laid down next to the passenger door like he'd been waiting for me. No collar, no hesitation. I opened the door, and he jumped in like he knew where we were going. Named him Red for the rust patch on his shoulder. Most days I didn't talk to a soul. Just Red and the birds and the occasional hardware store clerk when I needed nails or propane. Nights were the best part. I'd sit on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching the light drop behind the ridge, the kind of silence you feel in your bones. One morning I posted a picture on that old account I barely used anymore. Just the sunrise, my mug in hand, and Red's ears poking up at the bottom of the frame. No caption, no location. Just something about the moment felt still and worth sharing. I didn't think much of it. A week later, I got the letter. Plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in all caps like she used to label her Tupperware back in the day. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded twice. One sentence. He's gone. I'm scared. Below that, a phone number. No name. But I didn't need one. The handwriting was hers. I stared at that note for a long time. Folded it. Unfolded it. Read it again. Something about the slant of the letters. It didn't look panicked. It looked tired. Worn down. I don't know what I expected to feel, but I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel hate. I felt a weight I couldn't explain. I called the number. She picked up on the first ring. Jake. Her voice was barely a whisper, like she was in a closet or a bathroom, somewhere small where she could hear every sound outside the door. Yeah, I said. It's me. There was a pause. Then, softly, he's been following me. She meant Jeremy. She didn't have to say his name. Said he'd started showing up outside her work, parked across the street. Once at the grocery store. Twice at her sister's house, just sitting in his car. Never said anything. Never came to the door. Just watched. She filed reports. Even got a photo once. But by the time cops showed up, he was gone. He's not right, she said. He's not who I thought he was. No kidding. I listened. Asked questions. Got names, dates. She told me everything, haltingly, like every word cost her a little more strength. She said her sister was scared, that she couldn't stay there much longer, that she didn't know where else to go. Then came the part that surprised me more than anything. Can you help me? I sat there with the phone to my ear, heart thumping slow and steady. Red was curled at my feet, one ear twitching. The stove popped softly behind me. Outside, the wind had picked up, brushing pine needles across the window. She asked me for help. The same woman who betrayed me, lied to my face, brought another man into our life. The same woman who cried in court, but never said a word to me afterward. She was asking me, not her family, not her friends, me. I didn't say yes. Not right away. But I stood up, grabbed my coat, tossed the phone onto the couch, and looked down at Red. Come on, boy. He followed without hesitation. We got in the truck and headed east. Because sometimes doing the right thing isn't about who deserves what. Sometimes it's just about being the last man standing when everything else falls apart. And God help me. I drove back. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was Jake's final choice to help a moment of weakness or quiet strength? If you like the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.